Hey bosses, this is Rianne,
And this is Ellie.
and you're listening to the Be Your Own Boss podcast.
It's time for happy hour with your favorite hype squad. Here we inspire you to be the CEO of your life because you don't need a business to be your own boss.
We know that navigating the ups and downs of life can be overwhelming, but you're not alone. Let's level up together and tap into our boss energy.
Grab a beverage. It's time for BYOB.
Hey bosses, welcome back to BYOB. Today we have a special episode for you, and it's special because one, it's being recorded. So if you're watching this, hello, hey, hi, glad to see you. And two, we have a special series to kick off. So, Ellie, how are you feeling?
Good. I'm so excited. Like you said, we do have a lot happening today. We have our first video recording of our podcast, which is super exciting, and our new series. So I know we've done like a top 5 series before, but that was kind of here and there episodes. So this is our first like real series, which is super exciting.
For sure.
And that is the B series. So at Be Your Own Boss podcast, not only are we being our own bosses, but there are a lot of key things in life and characteristics that, we all aspire to be, and like vibrant, balanced, being authentic, being ourselves. And these are all topics we're super excited to discuss throughout this series between the two of us and also with some guests, which is really exciting.
So today we're kicking off the series with the very first B episode, which is going to be You. What other way to really kick off a series and to really talk about what centers all of this, which is us, ourselves, you, me, and I guess you could say. And we thought that it would be really cool to talk about some of the aspects that we have been able to really pull from and think about when we're talking about what it means to truly be authentically ourselves in different situations, when it comes to work, when it comes to your life, and when it comes to spending time with other people, because sometimes it can get a little bit difficult, especially if you're going through different transitions in life. So we thought we'd sit down and talk to you about how to be your most authentic self.
Yes, because we love you and people love you just as you are. So it's so important to be able to feel like you can be yourself, because Rianne and I were kind of talking before the episode, like it's exhausting trying to be everything to everyone, especially when you're not being your true self. So
Yeah.
we're pumped to dive in. But before we do, what beverage did you bring?
As it is BYOB, today I brought a Jock Pop Poppy. I'm super excited about it. I haven't had one of these in a long time. So when I picked them up, they were on sale and it was great. So I'm sipping on a Jock Pop today. How about you?
Yum, that's like the Dr. Pepper poppy, right? Or
Yep.
Dr. Pepper flavored
Yeah,
similarity. Nice.
it is.
Yum. Okay, I am sipping on some gingerberry kombucha.
Ooh, yum.
So very good out of a wine glass, because everything tastes better when it's out of a fancy glass. That's my philosophy.
I like it. Very fancy, very refreshing.
Yes, it's perfect. Very refreshing. But now let's jump in, like we're at happy hour with your gal pals, and talk all things authenticity and being you. And I think this is something that is like, with every topic, honestly, is ever evolving, because we go through different points in our life, whether it be middle school, which I feel like it's so hard sometimes of finding yourself and being yourself, and then in college when you're creating a new community, the transition coming out of college, becoming a parent, maybe it's getting a new job and you're reestablishing your brand and all of that. There are so many points in our life where, in every aspect of our life, authenticity and being yourself is so important. So this is a really fun topic to dive into today. And yeah, I guess to kick it off, what does being you mean to you? I know that sounds like an easy question, but
No, it's actually kind of hard now that I think about it. Like I had that as like one of the ending takeaway points that we were talking about, like define what it means to like be yourself. And I didn't even think about what like my own answer to that would be. So I'm really glad that you asked. And I think like for me, like what it means to truly be authentically myself is to put my values forward and have that be an extension of everything I do. So whether it's your first time meeting me or it's your 50th time meeting me, like there are things that you just pick up about me, about my personality and about my character that don't change, that could change,
Mm-hmm.
but they are just foundationally who I am to myself, and they are how I carry myself forward. So I guess for me, like how I show up authentically would be like I show up with energy, with enthusiasm, and I show up with a sense of playful character, but I'm like ready to get down to business and be professional. So
Mm-hmm.
like I think like a lot of people will listen to that who know me and will be like, yep, like that's definitely like who Rianne is as a person, like through and through. And people know that like I'm not afraid to like have fun, get down and dirty, but as well as like be super professional at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say like that's one of the things that I can do to be truly authentically myself. And I do want to say that, like you mentioned, Ellie, like it does ebb and flow. Like depending on what phase of life you're in, like you can be
Mm-hmm.
trying something new, you can be like trying to do things. Yeah, you can be trying new things, but I think like when you stand firm on your values, they become an extension of who you are, and that's how you live authentically.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yes, that was so good. No, I totally agree. I think I love what you said too of, well, every nugget in there was so good, but I think I totally agree with, whether you meet someone for the first time or you've been lifelong friends, you're showing up as the same version of yourself, like not being a chameleon in a way of like being different based on different groups or times. I mean, we can all be different situations, like a night out versus, you're in a meeting with people for work. So there's different scenarios and situations, but I think throughout to be able to, yeah, show those same values and character is so important. And another thing that I always think of is like we are our whole selves, like how you show up to work and who you are personally, who you are with your family. That's all you in one person, and they all influence each other. Like if you had a hard morning personally, sometimes you take that into work. If you have a hard day at work, sometimes you take that home. So how we show up in all areas of our life as ourselves is so important. But yeah, I can definitely attest to those characteristics that you named off too. And I think one that really stands out for me is that I always strive to be a positive energy in people's lives, at work, at home, to myself, like in all
Mm-hmm.
those areas. That's something I really strive for. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, and you touched on professional, and I'm excited to dive into this in our conversation because I feel like that has been hard for me sometimes. Is I come across as professional, and you also want to show personality. So the balance of like showing personality and professionalism, not
Mm-hmm.
wanting to mess anything up. I guess that's a bit of perfectionist too, probably. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're all just one being, one encapsulated version of ourselves.
Yeah, there is a lot to like talk about on this topic, and I think that like for me especially like looking at how I go through my day to day, it's like I want to keep that like at the center of my core. So, which is why we're talking about this today, like the aspect of being you and like leading authentically in every aspect of your life. So the three like main aspects that we'll talk about today is how you continue to show up as yourself at work, in like a professional setting, how you choose to show up with yourself in a social setting, so around other people, and how you choose to show up as yourself when you are alone, which can be even more difficult than some of these
Mm-hmm.
other situations. And like you mentioned, I feel like I struggled so much in the beginning of my career, and I still do actually, of like showing up authentically and bringing my personality into the professional side of things. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if you know a little bit about like my career history, I started out right away in the financial services industry. And financial services is not the most like what do you call it, like casual industry. It's a very
Very
regulated
formal.
industry, very formal, and like everything, it has to be like cut to the T, like it just very structured. And so like bringing my professional or like bringing my personality into professionalism was really hard at first because of all of that structure, because of the fact that I went to a structured company. Like I was like in one of the big corporate companies, so that had a lot of structure, as well as I will say like going into it as a young woman is also can be very challenging too, because when I was looking at my counterparts, like I knew that like the boys, the guys would just show up like however they wanted to show up. Like they would come with like Lulu sweats or whatever that looked like dress pants, and it would be okay. Like sure, like they looked professional. But for me, I knew that if I dressed the same way or if I showed up the same way as some of my male counterparts, I would be looked at as unprofessional, or I would be looked at as just, yeah, like not the most put together. So it was like, I do feel like there's a different standard to like how you show up in a professional setting that can sometimes be out of your control. But what I could control when I really did get comfortable within like showing my personality was I knew that I really had to be comfortable showing my personality in sales, because it's like you're selling a relationship or you're trying to like build relationships with people. So when you're not showing up authentically as yourself, it's like your customers, your clients, they just think you're talking to another like cookie cutter person, and you're not really getting into like the depth of the relationship that way. So I really started showing up authentically when I like really connected with this group of Chinese clients who I could speak Mandarin with. And this like really shocked like everybody else, because they didn't know that about me, or like my colleagues didn't know that about me, surprisingly, because nobody asked.
That,
But we'll
yeah,
get
they
into
never
that
knew that
later.
you spoke another language.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it just doesn't come up, which I get it. But like, after that, I was like, oh yeah, like I could put my own flair onto things. I could like start doing things a different way. It really like set me apart from like my other colleagues. So I knew that I had, it gave me a little bit of a boost. So then when I started like kind of climbing the ladder a little bit, gaining a little bit more credibility, I started putting my own flair onto like presentations that I was leading, or like a project that I was leading. And this is like still one of my favorite things. I think about it all the time. And it's a really great example of how you can bring your personality into a professional setting. Is when I led a project for my team, I put the PowerPoint together in Super Mario Bros. Themed, and like I constructed a PowerPoint. Like I assigned characters to all of us on the team. Like I was Mario, like this person was Luigi, this person was Toad, this person was like the flying Koopa Troopa or whatever. And it was so fun because everybody like related to it, like they knew what it was. And like I literally built out like each level of Super Mario Bros, like the video game. And like I remember each week was like a different world in the game, right? Like each week of the project was a different world, and as the weeks progressed, it gets harder, just like how the game does. And so when we got to the final thing, it was like the challenging, like the Bowser in the castle and whatever, and like that was like what we had to, the obstacle that we had to get through. And that's how I presented my project. Like everybody was pumped about it. I led a team of guys too, so like caters to the audience. And so like everybody was pumped about it. They were like, yeah, like let's collect like the most coins, or like let's level up or whatever like our objective was for the day. And I assigned those objectives, which was fun. So it's like I really was able to bring my personality into it, and everybody really grasped on. And that PowerPoint was like passed on to my leadership because it was so popular,
Wow.
and everybody was like, oh my God, this is such a different way to do it. So I think there's different, what I'm trying to say is that there's different ways to bring in your creativity. And even though you may think that like this is not the most professional setting, even though when there are different professional settings, you can gauge on like what you can bring in. So that creativity wasn't just like, oh, I was screwing off with the like Super Mario game and there was no intention or like objective to it, right? So like there's different ways that you can bring in your personality. I just think that like you, like I said, have to be intentional about it, has to apply to some things that you're doing, and you have to get comfortable in your role, which does come with like establishing credibility. But the more comfortable that I got, just kind of like easing into it, the more creative I was able to be, and that led me to greater success because I was able to stand out from the team.
That is such a fun story. That sounds awesome. And also like you were saying at the beginning too, it just makes all the difference in sales, but whatever profession you're in, across the board, to be able to build rapport with people and, being yourself and asking them about themselves. And then hopefully, they can ask about you and you can share a little bit, because I think sharing in those areas is so important to build that rapport. And then, having the creativity that just totally lets you stand apart from the crowd and brings in your fun personality. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I like what you said about building rapport, because it's like I don't think I could have connected with my colleagues or like my my teammates as well if they didn't see that my personality side of it. I had several people, like my manager had, like when I had a one-on-one with her, she came up to me and she was like, Rianne, so you are so professional, which is great, but you also just seem like very stern and like she didn't say unapproachable, because I am a very approachable person, but she's like, you just seem to take things very seriously. And I was like, well, yeah, I do. Like, how else am I supposed to be like in this setting? But then she was like, it's okay to like show a little bit of your personality. And to me at that time, I felt kind of like a double-edged sword, because like I said, there's just double standards in the industry. But I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. Like, how can I continue to show a little bit of my personality while still being able to like protect my own peace, but allow people to get to know me? So yeah, like even if you're not in sales, like if you're, let's say like if you're a teacher or if you are a nurse and, you bond through different aspects of your day to day, but you can also bond through other aspects too. Like if you all like to read the same genre, you can start like a book club between like your colleagues. And that's like a creative part of the day that you can bring into kind of spark joy, as well as just like build relationships and build friendships.
Yes, definitely. I think you touching on the like professionalism meets personality double-edged sword, I feel that. And I think that's something I'm always working through, but was really hard for me as well starting my career. Especially, I feel like I feel the same as you in that a lot of the people I work with are like very seasoned in their career. Like they have kids my age.
Right.
And maybe some even have grandkids my age. And
Right.
of wanting to be professional, to show them like you are credible, you can help them. And I'm speaking from the sales lens, but like I have the knowledge to be able to provide, good customer service and help you through any challenges, and find the right products for you. But I felt like such imposter syndrome too, because I'm like, they would talk to me about their grandkids going off to college, and here I am like 6 months out of college helping them. And I think I've come so far in being able to show that personality, and that's helped build relationships and rapport with customers. But
Yeah.
I just remember that was really hard starting out, of figuring out like what's the balance of sharing about myself also, because I was very like I kept some information very close to me, and that I didn't want people to know my age.
Which is okay.
Because I felt,
That's
yeah,
totally
I feel
fair.
like, which, yeah, I mean, we're not entitled to tell people our ages anyway, but they would say like, oh, you sound very young. Like, how old are you? And it's like how you respond to that, where you want to be professional. And to me, having a younger age made me feel like not as worthy, I guess.
Yeah.
And, anyway, I
Yeah.
know that's kind of getting off on a tangent about authenticity.
No, I get it. Like
but
people would say to me like I've been in the industry longer than you've been alive. And I would be like,
Yes.
yeah, that's fair. And then I just kind of put that back on them. I would say like, congratulations. Like that's great. And then I just
Yeah.
kind of like feed their own ego. So I get off of the topic. But yeah,
I'm
if
so
they,
glad I can bring a fresh perspective to the industry.
right, exactly. No,
No,
that's
but
true. It's totally true. Like, I mean, yeah, you do. And if they did ask about my age, I would always say I'm just under 30.
oh,
And then I would just leave it at that.
that's a good way to say
Yeah.
it. I would say like, oh, I'm out of college. I've been with the company, da 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 da, like kind of skirting around. But that's a good way to put it, because
Oh my gosh, I
it is
don't,
true.
yeah, I don't even bring up college, because I feel like if I brought up college, I'd be like, oh yeah, she's way too young and automatically discredit me. I'd just be like, just under 30.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, and I think we both bring this up because it's situations like that that really it's so important to be authentic to yourself, and kind of also learning that boundary, I guess, of obviously like you don't need to share your age and things like that, but of
Yeah.
finding that confidence in that boundary of wanting to share about yourself and create those relationships and connections, whether it be in a professional setting or personal setting, but still remaining true to yourself, which is so important.
Ellie, I wanted to ask, like you mentioned how like it was difficult and sometimes, yeah, it still is difficult to be able to like bring your own perspective and not have the imposter syndrome. Like, what are some of the things, if you can remember, of like how you got past that point? Or like what are some of the helpful things that like we could share to like help people get through to that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I know we just talked, was it last week's episode? That the fear of failure and also what people think of you. But in the work setting, for me, it was like I was so paralyzed of like the fear of doing something wrong that you just want to come across as like you have it all together. And especially in work, like I'm saying this from a work lens of like with my age, I feel like I tried even harder to seem like I had everything together. And then when I realized like nobody's expecting me to be perfect, that
No.
took so much pressure off. And I think too, we both started in like COVID times where we were remote, but just being able to create stronger relationships with my coworkers helped a lot too because work is so much of our life. So being able to have some relationships helps not only you feel job satisfaction, but when you're learning, it helps you feel like comfort in reaching out to people to ask questions. And I think it also builds your brand because you're showing people that you're curious to learn, enthusiastic to learn. So I think one of the biggest things was I really just had to get over the fear of messing up because you are guaranteed to make a mistake at some point. And so that was a huge one. Otherwise, I think it was really just, it also came with time, like with
It does,
confidence of
for sure.
some of, when I look back at my, well, and this is ongoing, but when I look back at some of the times that I had the biggest growth, it was time that I was like working through the hardest obstacles, whether it be in work or personally. I had these really challenging conversations I had to have, or yeah, just working through ambiguity and working through obstacles, specifically with delivering information and news that no one wants to hear, like delivering bad news. And that helped me gain so much confidence in having tough conversations because I feel like that wasn't something, especially in the professional side of things, like I feel like I never really had a tough conversation in college
Right.
besides like grades and things like that. So to have to deliver news that like hurts people's business or impacts someone's business and like learning how to communicate that and how to maintain partnership through that. Anyway, I digress. But I think those are the biggest things of like learning through obstacles, knowing that you are going to mess up and letting that fear of failure go, and then also just building those relationships. So,
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. I always think back to when I first started, like not being afraid to fail forward. And yeah, we did talk about that in the last episode or a couple episodes ago, but like not being afraid to just understand that like things are not going to be perfect all the time. So if you take that pressure off of yourself, you understand that like you can really learn from your failures and it's all just going to get better from there. So I always say fail forward. Don't be afraid to do that. As well as like just, I love what you said. Like it does take time. Like it's not just one day you wake up and like this is all better, but it does take a mind shift to really understand that like you hold value that other people are seeking. Even though like for you, Ellie, like you were bringing like tough information, it's like that's information that they needed to hear in order to move on with their business. Like you are still adding a new perspective onto it, even though it's a negative one. Like, but overall, you're trying to help them. So in any aspect of your work, like people are seeking your expertise, no matter what age you are, no matter what field you're in. Like they're coming to you for a specific reason, and there is a reason why you are in the spot or the position that you're in. So be confident in that. And A lot of people will say fake it till you make it, like, oh, fake it till you make it kind of thing, like, huh, whatever, I'm just gonna do that. But like, it really is so important to like also shift that mindset into be it or like believe it and be it. Like, I think that's a way more positive way to put something rather than fake it till you make it.
That's such a good perspective. I've never thought of that, where like you don't want to fake yourself.
No.
I love that. Believe it until you be it. Is that what you said?
Be it. Yeah, believe it till you be it. Yeah.
Believe it till you be it. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I think that so those are some growth moments, but at the end of the day, figuring out well, I think that brings up a whole nother conversation though too of some yes is so easy to say. So it's like learning to say the no's is really hard. And I think that's part of like self-reflection too, and learning yourself is where you have to say the yeses and where you have to say the no's. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious though. I know I kind of talked about that in kind of a professional setting, I guess, of imposter syndrome and finding myself in work, which I feel like I've come such a long way since then. But I'm curious of your experience too, if you felt that way and how you've kind of overcome it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I still do. Like, especially right now, transitioning into a new career. Like, in this new role, I'm supposed to be like teaching people the process of sales. And like some of these people's industries I've never even heard of because I've only been in the financial services industry. But I have to remind myself that it's not the industry that makes my expertise worthy. It's the fact that like I've been in situations and I've had experiences of sales processes from my industry that I can pull from to teach people the value of these processes. So that's a really cool way to kind of shift my mind into it. But yeah, I'm still like, oh my gosh, like am I like worthy enough to be in this position? Like am I like good enough to like teach people? But then it's I have to remember that like yes, like I got into this position for a reason and I'm going to carry it through, and I do have a value that I bring to the table and people are willing to listen to that. So it's just it's a constant reminder that I have for myself, but at the same time I also have to reflect that like it's really cool that I get to pull from the experiences from the financial services industry because like I said, it's not the most casual industry. Like it's a very structured industry and conversations can be very difficult. So that has given me a lot of experience in how different sales processes work within like a difficult industry. So now it's like those are experiences I get to share with others no matter where they're at in their sales career.
Yeah, that is really exciting. And no matter what, and I know we are both in sales, so I feel like we talk about it a lot, but that all these skills are so transferable to
Yeah.
anything, even in life as well. And I feel like, yeah, we've talked a lot about career and showing up as ourselves, like some of the obstacles we've had and some things that we've done to overcome that, of finding authenticity, specifically the balance between showing your personality and also professionalism. And yeah, I think it sounds like we both have come a really long way in that, but it takes time. Like it really does take time and the development of confidence in yourself in this new stage of life. But now kind of switching gears to personal, I think that's it's so important too to show up as your whole self, your authentic self personally. And yeah, it can be tough in some seasons of life. I'm curious if you have like any specific tips or like stories, I guess, of what that looks like in your life with being authentic and showing authenticity.
Yeah, I think like it's can be difficult when you are in a group setting because when you are meeting new people, especially if you're going into high school or if you're going into college, you want to be relatable and you want to click with the most people. Like I think back to my freshman year, like everyone kind of just like grabs onto the first person that they can have a conversation with, and then it's like you expect them to be there for the whole 4 years when it might not even like get through to the end of the week, and that's okay. And I think like I think it's so applicable no matter if you're meeting new friends or if you are in a workplace to just say that like especially your workplace, like if they don't accept you for your own values and your own personality, like if you're bringing your true self into work and they're like no, tone it down or like stop doing that, it's time to find a new job. It's time to find a new group of friends. Like, that's the harsh reality of it, but I promise you, you will be so much happier when you do realize that if you surround yourself with people who are in the same, who share your similar values, who share similar beliefs as you, the similar foundations, like you will be so much happier being around those people who you can relate to rather than trying to relate to other people that don't reflect your values.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I feel like there's so much power in the diverse like experiences and all of that, but it's like if you're in an energy or you're in a environment that's draining your energy and you feel like you can't show up as your true self, like that's you don't want to be in an energy drain situation. And I think that's so hard too, whether it be with a friend group, sometimes even family. I know that's really hard. In a work setting of figuring out how to kind of distance yourself and, if it be your job, finding a new one because you have to protect your peace and your energy and
Yeah.
finding the space that appreciates that. Because I think part of being true to yourself and being yourself is knowing your strengths. So you want to be in an environment that appreciates and lets you use those strengths for sure.
For sure. I love that. And I think like the biggest part about surrounding yourself with other people is also like setting boundaries. Like being able to set boundaries for maybe you do really like hanging out with a certain group of people or a certain group of friends, but they always go out like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday. And then you're like, no, I have to get up early for work or for class on Monday. I'm not going to do that. Or, like I don't want to be hungover all the time. Like you can set the boundary to say, hey, like I'll go out with you Friday and Saturday, but like the other days I'm just going to lay low and kind of just like take time to myself, which can be really hard at first, especially like I said, when you are in a new environment, you're trying to make the most friends. But like you will have so much more energy and you will have so much more time to focus on what you truly love to do rather than giving that energy out continuously to other people and just like burning yourself out, right?
Totally. I think that's such a good point too of figuring out where you want to put your energy and also like what you enjoy doing to put your energy towards. Yeah, I feel that. I think that was something I really struggled with in college, in specifically the first like 2 years of college where it was just the thing. Everyone, like people would literally go out 7 days a week. And there it and especially as a freshman, I feel like there's so much pressure to do that.
Yeah.
And it's so hard. But
Which is fine. You do you.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
love doing
exactly.
that, if you have like, if that gives you energy, then do it. If you're the person that's like, I want to go out 4 out of the 5 days a week, and I don't understand how people just sit in their dorm rooms like 2 out of the 4 days that we go out. Do you like surround yourself with that group of people that really does serve your energy? And I think that's just to say that like there is someone for everyone. Or, I don't know how that phrase goes, but you get the point. Like
Yeah,
there is
yeah.
going to be someone who is going to relate to that. So those are your people instead. So like it's okay to like take time to find those groups of people that you do feel full when you are surrounded by them. And I would just say like as time goes on, like surround yourself with like well-rounded people who really contribute to your own life. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Like I would rather have 4 quarters rather than 100 pennies, which means I would rather have like less like quality friends versus more friends that I just have a very surface level relationship with and I have to keep up with, right? So it's better for my own energy. That's just what I prefer.
Yeah, exactly. Finding the environment that's best for you.
Yeah, do you have any other tips of like wanting to I guess like put your own values forward, especially when you're in a social setting?
Yeah, I think we've kind of touched on this, but just like exploring your values, and I think a lot of that comes through self-reflection of figuring that out and figuring like what aligns with you. And also I'd say like internal self-talk is a big one too, whether it be in social settings or I guess I know we're diving into like our self uh, be you through yourself when you're alone as well. But I think that's such an important thing too, where just like speaking kindly to yourself. I know for me, I'm an overthinker and I'm
Hmm.
also weird. So sometimes I say things, I'm like, oh, that was so weird. And then I beat myself up like, Elizabeth, everyone thinks that's so weird. But you just have to speak kindly to yourself. And then I'll just like shut my mind off of like, you know what? That's just who I am. And if they think that's weird, so be it. But I'm just being myself. So
Mm, yeah,
that's a huge thing too.
that is a huge thing. And thank you for sharing that because I think like a lot of people do think that way. Like I think about myself that way a lot too. And like to help myself get out of that, I'll kind of remind myself like those types of negative thoughts aren't something that I would say to a friend. So why would I say them to myself? Like if somebody said something quirky, like if you said something quirky, I would have been like, I wouldn't be like, Ellie, that's stupid. Like stop. Like, right? Like that's just not who I am as a person. That's not who you are as a person. Like we don't vibe towards that kind of negative energy. So why do we attract that to ourselves and say that back to ourselves, right? When we wouldn't say it to another person. So
Yeah.
I just kind of flipped that around to myself and was like, okay, would I stare at myself and like stare at myself in the mirror and say that to myself? No. So why should I think that way? Right. But it is harder, easier said than done, especially when it's your own internal thoughts. So like being able to just like gravitate towards something positive and kind of just snap your mind out of it or cut the thoughts where they are, leave them where they are, walk away, let your mind wander to something, someplace happy, some happy thoughts, and then fill your cup up that way.
Yes. Yeah, that's such a good point too of like would you speak that to others? Then why are you speaking it to yourselves? Um yeah, that's so good. So, yeah, do you have any other yeah, in a social setting before we move on to like within ourselves?
I think like the biggest thing within that is like I said before, like if other people are not willing to accept your values and how you show up authentically, then they're not the people for you. There will always be people that do vibe with who you are as a person and who the energy that you give out. It might take some time to really build that community and find who those people are, but the more intentional you are with it, the more deeper relationships that you're going to have and the happier you will be. So like I think like for me like I'm very grateful to have found that especially in Minnesota. Like I love my group of college friends that I've just really cultivated a deep relationship with, and like we've gone through so much like just in college, you know, right? Like growing up as people as adults and then like doing COVID, like enduring COVID together and then post COVID of like coming back together. Like I think like those different points can be kind of like traumatic, which kind of bonds us, but also really happy parts that like bond you together too. And I think back to like why they have bonded us so much is the aspect of like how we just all care so much about each other and each other's well-being and how our values all just kind of align with each other. So that's what really brings us together as a group, and I hope that you can continue to find that within your community and within yourselves, without having to falter any of your values.
Totally. Remaining true to your values, your strengths, the energy you want, and being able to find that in a community that ultimately lets you be your best self. So, yeah, going into our best selves and thinking about what it means to be you to your own self, that is so important because at the end of the day, like that's who you are. You know, you want to be comfortable and confident in yourself and have that, yeah, that self confidence to be able to show up for yourself with that and to others. And I think we kind of touched on that too a little bit with the internal self talk. But I know you mentioned at the start of this episode, sometimes that's the hardest piece is doing that to yourself and showing up for yourself in that way.
Yeah, for sure. I think like it's so easy when you can like apply it into your life and your career and in social settings, but then like when you're alone by yourself, it's like you really have to first of all take time to reflect on what being authentic means to you. And in the beginning of this, we defined what authenticity means to us and how we can show up authentically. And my definition can very well be different from your definition. So just take time to think about like what authenticity means to you and what it means to show up as yourself in different settings, whether it's in a group, whether it's by yourself. But yeah, for me, it's just like learning what it means to be authentic and also like finding what makes you feel confident. And to do that, you have to spend time with yourself. And that's the hard part is spending time with yourself. And what I mean by that is not scrolling on your phone by yourself. That doesn't count. Even though, yes, you're technically by yourself, but you're not intentionally spending time with yourself because your thoughts are elsewhere and you're pouring energy into other people's lives and what they are doing rather than what you are doing. So spend time with yourself, really dig deep into your internal thoughts to maybe journal or reflect on what makes you feel happy, take yourself on a date, do something fun that makes you feel happy.
I love that so much. I have come a long way in feeling good in time alone, but that has always been hard for me. I think like I find so much comfort in companionship, even if I'm like in the same room as someone and we're not talking, like it just feels so good to me to have like someone there. And so that's something that I've always had to work on is being okay with spending time by myself. And I feel like I still have a long way to go. Like I went out to dinner by myself a few times actually in the last few
Ooh,
weeks, which was
yeah.
like a big step for me. I feel like my next step is going to the movies by myself.
Ooh,
But I love that where it's like date yourself, like go on walks. I love how you said journaling because then you're also taking time to self-reflect. Yeah, there's so many things you can do to really like spend time getting to know yourself because I think that's where a lot of like authenticity and confidence comes from is being able to understand yourself and having that same I don't know, people say like would you still do something or what is it? Maybe this is off topic, but it's like you see trash on the street, like would you pick it up if someone wasn't watching you, like if you were just alone? And taking that into the context of being yourself of like is who you are when you're with people the same as who you are when you're not, like
yeah,
would you still do that act of kindness to yourself as you would to others, I guess
right.
is how I view that.
Yeah, I love that. I'm all about like doing it for the plot or like, like doing it for the story, but not like the Instagram story. Like, don't just do it so then you can like post about it for other people to see. Like, do it because it actually makes you happy. Like, do I love romanticizing my life and like documenting it, whatever I do? Yes. But like, I didn't just like set it up for the Instagram picture and then I'm miserable, like being at a picnic by myself and all I'm doing is scrolling on TikTok, right? Like, and if I'm just saying, like, if it does take you that step to get there, like, if taking yourself on a picnic really makes you feel uncomfortable, hello, extroverts, me and Ellie are here for you. And if it does, like, just take it, do the small things. And I do like what you said about the movies. I think a movie could be a really easy way to take yourself on a date because you don't have to, like, really be in your own thoughts because you're watching a movie. And, like, I feel like when you're taking yourself out to dinner, like, especially if you like didn't bring your book with you, you're kind of like waiting and you're kind of like looking
Yeah.
around. You might be thinking what other people are thinking of you, which is tough. So maybe like a movie is a really good place to start. But for me, I love picnics and I know they make me feel really happy, especially when I like make the charcuterie, especially when I like make the like chocolate covered strawberries or like go get like the nice little treats from Trader Joe's. Like that's what I just love to do. So that's one thing that like you could do to really make yourself feel more confident. And another thing I will say that I've found that made that like reflects when I'm the most confident is not taking life too seriously. And again, easier said than done, but I found that like it's okay to laugh at yourself a little bit.
Yes.
Like laugh at yourself every once in a while. Like sometimes I'll
Yeah.
do like the goofiest thing and like I'll just like chuckle at myself like in my car or like if I'm belting something and it's just like totally off key. And if I'm like doing if I just say like a stupid joke, I laugh at myself because I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm so funny." But nobody else would think that I'm funny, but I think I'm hilarious. And so it's like don't take yourself so seriously because this life is so beautiful and that you're not supposed to be this cookie cutter structured person all the time. So it's okay to take things not too seriously. This way you have fun and you feel more confident. Like that's when I feel the most confident is when I don't take
Yes.
life too seriously. So
I love
try it
that so
out.
much. Yeah,
Comedy can
I've
be a relief.
it really can. I've recently also like I jam in my car. Like I will
Hmm.
crank the volume up, especially as I'm preparing for the Eras tour. I'm going through all of
Love it.
Taylor's albums, and I will crank the volume up and literally be at a stoplight and know that people are looking at me, and I'll still be jamming like full out, and everyone's
Hmm.
probably, well, I don't care what they think, whether they be like, yeah, you go, girl, or like, what the heck are you doing? But just to be like, yeah, like you said, don't take it too seriously. And yesterday I was on a walk and like tripped. The sidewalk was uneven and I literally tripped and fell and I just laughed. I'm like,
Oh,
it's just, I was okay.
oh
But
no.
life is so much better when you can just laugh. Like,
Hmm.
just have fun and just laugh at
Laugh it off.
yourself. Yeah, laugh it off.
Hmm.
But that's so good. And
It's a
I
good
think
one.
another, yes, another thing too that we've talked about this before is to not compare and to stop comparing yourself. I think, I'm sure everyone's heard this, but you can only compare yourself to yourself
Mm.
and not to others. I think that's a huge thing too, because when we talk about being you and being authentic, a lot of that has to do with self reflection and, like we've been discussing, like finding your values and digging within yourself. So, not turning to your neighbor and saying,
Hmm.
like, what is she like? What are they like? But into yourself and to not compare yourself. Just like accept yourself as you are and in a judgment free space to be able
Hmm.
to fully be who you are.
Yes. Comparison is the thief of joy, and
It
social media
is.
does not make it easy on us to not compare our lives with people. But yeah, like Ellie said, like, and like I said earlier, like set that boundary. Like if you continuously find yourself on social media comparing yourself to other people, like unfollow them. Like it might be hard to do, but
Yeah,
you'll be so much
mute.
happier.
Yeah.
And I promise you won't even notice it after like the third time you go on Instagram that you unfollowed them. So it's okay. Or
Mm-hmm.
just like mute them if they're like a someone that you keep that you want to be close with, but you keep finding yourself like comparing yourself to their
Mm-hmm.
content, even if it's like uplifting or if it's like something cool that they're doing. But as soon as those negative thoughts start, that's where you need to set that boundary and remove yourself from those negative thoughts. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like, and then when you stop that comparison, you have so much more time and energy to direct back to self development mode. So, like, you have so
Mm-hmm.
much more time to take yourself on that picnic or go to that movie or read that book that you've always been wanting to read. Like, it can be such a like mind shift when you stop comparing yourself to others because it really does rob you of joy and energy that you could be spending to something else that could overall really benefit you.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I think a lot of those activities are very mind numbing. Like it's so easy to just pull out your phone and scroll. It's
Hmm.
hard. Well, I mean, getting started, it's hard. I feel like to get up and do something for yourself when you know you have your rectangular device that you can just like open an app and turn your brain off.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a hard thing too, is like almost rewiring your brain to be like it's okay to take time for yourself, for like self-love, self-discovery, self-development, and choosing to opt for an activity that brings you energy, like you said, instead of something that drains you.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Like, just kind of reflect on at the end of the day. Like, I scroll on TikTok too. Like, I am like deep into like the like Eras Tour TikTok, and I
Oh,
am
yeah.
deep into whatever is Barbie premiere and whatever else is going on right now. But like, the thing is that like you need to reflect at the end of the day of like how much time you are or like how much you're pouring into other people's buckets, like other people compared to your own bucket. Like
Mhm.
if you're like, wow, I just the only time I spent with myself today is when I was brushing my teeth. And even when I was brushing my teeth, I was looking at somebody else's Instagram. Like that is like a huge like game changer like when you start opening it up into that
Mhm.
perspective. So like then you just got to really reflect like okay, like I can still scroll on TikTok, but maybe like in the morning I'll journal and like eat a nice breakfast before I get into all of the emails, like before I open
Mhm.
Outlook and people start pulling me one direction and another. So I
Yes,
would just say
balance.
yeah, have a balance, set boundaries, stop the comparison game, and like really define what authenticity means to you because then you stop like letting other negative thoughts get into your way because you
Mhm.
kind of have like this bubble of like a boundary around you and you have that like self awareness and confidence that nobody's gonna burst that bubble of yours.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. it's hard too sometimes. Like, 4th of July week and like the week leading up, like when we were at the shack together, I
Hmm.
feel like I was never on my phone really because
Hmm.
you're like with others and there's so much to do. And now that I'm back in my environment, I found that like I've been on my phone more and I'm like, I'm especially in preparation for this episode, I'm like, I need to catch myself and think about, like you said, how much time are you spending on yourself? And I think that can be hard too, like when you're in and out of routine. So one thing that's really helpful to me is, and one thing that I am always working on is like the morning routine. And now I
Hmm.
really want to work on like a night routine. I'd love to
Hmm.
be able to, like ideally, I want my phone outside my room
Yeah.
and like it gets you out of bed in the morning and you don't just have your phone on your bedside table, but like having a morning and night routine that like lets me start my day grounded and then end it grounded.
Hmm.
And that's always helped me stay consistent like in the routine changes because summer can be hard sometimes with summer with the busyness of like finding that time for yourself to be
Yeah.
able to do things for yourself and
Hmm.
also not get caught in the scrolls. I'm with you, Rianne. My whole TikTok page is Eras tour, golf, wedding planning, and more Taylor Swift. Like it's all Ah,
I
it's
love
hard
it.
sometimes to get out of it, but
It is. But hopefully, we've given you some tangible tips to kind of pull yourself out of those negative environments so that you're feeding yourself with all the positive energy. And before we move forward, Elliot, are there any other tips or takeaways that you want to share to wrap up this whole thing about living authentically and leading an authentic life in every aspect?
yeah, I think we had so many good points, and I think, like we've talked about, this is an ever evolving thing. But I know for both of us, like before we started recording, we talked about in general, like through it all, is not caring what other people think. And that
Hmm.
is so, so, so hard. And I
Yeah.
know for me, it's something I'm always working on. But hopefully, listening to the episode in whatever stage of life you're in, whether you're finding a community, maintaining it, building it, whatever it may be, is really like finding yourself and coming back to what brings you energy, what brings you joy, and to as much as you possibly can tune out that negative energy around you and being wrapped in of the what ifs, what are they thinking, and all of that. Because at the end of the day, like you are perfect just the way that you are, and how you show up to others.
Yeah, it can be really hard to not give an F about what anybody thinks. I think like for me, like how I approach that, just like one more simple takeaway is like if I find myself like kind of just I think about it like if I did something wrong, like driving on the road or like when someone honks at me, like I get really embarrassed and I'm just like, oh my God, like I kind of like send myself into a spiral about like what else I could have done. But then they're like miles ahead of you already. Like they've driven away, like they don't care. And so like I kind of just think about like, okay, and just leave the thought where it is, like give it a little gentle kiss on the forehead and then just like leave it be. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Like all you have to do is bring like one positive thought of kindness into it. Like, oh, I'm sorry, like I'm sorry I cut you off, random guy on the road. I hope your day is well. You know, I kind of just speak that into the universe and then I just leave it be. And that's kind
Yeah.
of how I have to approach like other things, like in bigger scenarios, like when we are talking in front of a group or when somebody's listening to this episode of the podcast. Like I just can't give that much energy into it. So I just get a little kiss on the forehead, let it be.
Yes. Man, I'm working on that. I love that though. I think in yoga practice, they always say, like, if a thought comes up to you in your practice, like, acknowledge it and dismiss it. Like, say,
Exactly. Yeah.
thank you, and then let it go. And that is something I'm working on.
Yep.
And I strive to be that where I can say, see ya.
Yep.
But yeah, I love that.
You got this.
For
We're
sure.
doing this together, right? Like this is
Yeah.
the beauty of this podcast is like we are by no means coming to you from this perspective of like the all-knowing people. Like no, that's
Oh
not
my
who we
gosh,
are.
no.
Like
Yeah.
we are working through this together, so we hope that you find comfort in the relatability as well as like maybe having some nuggets to pull from as well to make you feel more positive and more confident as you go about your life.
Yes, life's a journey and we're all just on it together, figuring it
Exactly.
out together.
Exactly.
But yes, let's wrap it up with an affirmation. Do you want to share today's affirmation? Or I can share it
Yes.
too.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So today's affirmation is I am free to be my true and authentic self at all times.
Ooh, Magical. I love it. I love it. That's such a good one. Goes right back to what we were talking about. So
Yes. Yes. Feel that
lovely.
freedom. Feel that freedom to be yourself, your authentic and true self at all times.
Love
So,
it.
like Rian said, we're all working on it together. So, if you want to reach out, like if this conversation really spoke to you, feel free to reach out to us, DM us, send us an email. So you can find us at on Instagram at Be Your Own Boss Podcast, and then our Facebook community, which is Be Your Own Boss Podcast Community, over on our website, where you can find all that contact information. So we hope to see you over there to chat more.
Yay. Also, for our Minnesota friends, if you are listening to this in the morning of Thursday, and I forgot what date it's going to be, Thursday, July, what is it?
This Thursday?
13th. Yep, this
Yes.
Thursday. Thursday, July 13th, if you are around the Minneapolis Twin Cities area, I will be sitting down at Coconut Whisk Cafe in downtown Minneapolis to come have a little coffee and chat. I would love to see you, get to know you, hear any of the feedback you have for the podcast, or just kind of get to know you in general. If you want to stop by on your lunch break, I would love to see you. I will have mugs available for sale if you want to purchase your own BYOB beverage clear acrylic mug. They're so cute. We'll post some pictures of that this way you can see them on our social media. But yes, we can't wait to keep up with
That's
you.
today.
Yeah, well, yeah,
If you're
technically
listening
today.
to this
Yes.
today,
If you were
yeah,
listening
then
to
get
this
on
today.
over.
Yep, if you're listening to it in the morning of today, of when we post this episode, I'll be there from 11 to 1 p.m. So if you're around, come stop by and say hi. Grab a little beverage from Coconut Whisk, one of our favorite small businesses in the Twin Cities. And that's it for announcements and our social media plug. And as always, if you found this relatable, please share it with someone, because we just love to grow our own community and continue to empower more bosses like you. And anyway, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for watching if you're tuning in over on video.
Yay.
Hey, and we'll see you next Thursday. We post every Thursday, and we'll catch you again on Thursday. So that's it for us, and we'll see you next time, bosses.
Cheers,
Cheers.
bosses.
Bye.